The doors slide open for me before I lift a finger. A system I designed. That's what this building is. Engineered obedience. Marble you can't scratch. Glass that thickens just enough to silence the chaos outside. Inside, everything listens. Everything obeys, except for her. She's not here anymore. She's the only thing that ever asked me, without raising her voice. What are you building that you'll still want to live inside? The house is immaculate. Curated, photographed, cover-worthy. The kind of place they feature in winter editions of Luxury Home. Magazines with captions like, timeless design for the relentlessly. Successful. It's 8:34 p.m. I still wear my suit. The jacket rests on the back of a stainless chair. The watch fits too perfectly. My socks cost more than most people's week of groceries. And I haven't felt the floor in months. Somewhere in the corner. My award from last year still lights up every hour on a motion sensor. I've thought about unplugging it, but leaving it on feels truer. A monument to everything I can still win, and everything I already lost. They say I'm unbeatable. I'm the youngest in the sector to hit my valuation. The first to integrate what they now call emotional intelligence into luxury design algorithms. They ask about my systems, my interfaces, my tactics, my clients, my kill rate. They want to know how I closed the Milan deal without flying there, without blinking, without bleeding. I let them believe it, because the truth? The bleeding didn't show. Not on me. It showed on her. I walk past the shelving unit where she used to keep her sketchbooks. Everything's gone, except the one with the green spine she forgot. Or maybe meant to leave. I haven't opened it, not because I'm afraid of what's in it, but because I already know what isn't. Me. Her name was Ayla Verne. She wasn't famous when we met. Not interested in headlines. Didn't lead her sentences with buzzwords or wait for approval after she spoke. She liked clean ideas, clean lines. Soft corners, empty space filled only when necessary. She said marketing made most spaces ugly, that rich people hide behind manufactured textures to feel like they belong in what they've built. She never needed to belong, she just needed to be honest, with air, with color, with me. Nobody knew about us, not really, and I pretended that was about privacy, but it wasn't. It was about control. What happens when you bring love into the place where your name is printed on glass? You risk losing both, so I kept her elsewhere, in quiet dinners, in the private studio, in the loft above the flagship layout library, the one nobody else had keycard access to. She never asked for more, until she did, and I wasn't brave enough to say what mattered. So I said nothing, and saying nothing came at a cost. Her toothbrush sat at the edge of my sink longer than she stayed here, her mug, the one with the hand-cast clay lip, and the hairline crack never moved after she left. It still sits on the shelf collecting dust, like it's waiting for her hands instead of mine. Funny how a cup can outlast a connection when one's held tighter than the other. I walk into the kitchen. The lights wake up before I do. Sensors, silent service automation, air that adjusts itself without question, systems that exist, to keep me from noticing what it feels like to be alone. But I feel it anyway, because control doesn't hug you, strategy doesn't ask how your day was. Legacy doesn't laugh loudly next to you after tripping on a stair you designed to be flawless. She did that. She tripped once and looked up at me. Smiling, said, "I guess perfect doesn't mean livable." I replied, "Perfection's the point." She brushed past me that day and whispered, "Then I guess I'm not." And that was the first time I realized, could build a world that would, wow, but I couldn't design love that would stay. Not if I refused to stand beside it in daylight. Not if I only touched it behind closed doors. Not if I kept quiet every time I should have said, "She's not a guest. She's the reason I come back here, and now the house does everything but hold me, and that's what makes it worse. I had the world at my feet, but the only thing that ever taught me how to feel it walked away without making a sound. They invited her to audit the space, not speak. It was a pitch review. My project leads. 3 presentation boards, 2 overpriced models, all positioned beneath a suspended light that cost more than Ayla's car. She walked in holding a sketch pad instead of a tablet, hair pinned loosely. No branded notebook. No assistant trailing her. She didn't introduce herself, just stood next to the wall with measured indifference. "I'm assuming these are final presentations?" she asked flatly. My lead designer nodded before I could answer. "Yes, we're in formal run-through staging." She flipped open her sketch pad. "They're going to fail." Silence. The word cut through the room like glass. You learn to read what people want in a place like mine. Applause. Recognition. Access. She didn't ask for introductions. Didn't even look up when people stared her down for speaking out of turn. One of my co-leads cleared her throat. "Excuse me, who are—" Ayla looked at her then, only briefly, architect. "Specialist in spatial psychology. You brought me for audit." "This is audit." She turned a page. "Your light layering's off balance. Overhead warmth conflicts with the floor's cooling tone. Psychologically, guest will feel anxious by minute 3. Claustrophobic within 6. Nobody spoke. She gestured at the table. "You've over-amplified vertical features for optics. It photographs bold, but it lives cold." I hadn't spoken yet. She finally looked at me. "Let me guess. You approved the angles yourself?" I raised an eyebrow. "You say that like it's a fault?" "No," she said. "I say it like it's a pattern." That was our first meeting. I walked her to the cement stairwell after the presentation because I didn't want the others overhearing. "You lack restraint," I said. "I'm not here for decoration. You like being contrary?" "I like honesty." "You won't last long in this city with that tone." She smiled faintly but without warmth. "You'd be surprised what lasts." I expected her to flinch. People usually did by that point. When I unrolled the calm hostility I'd learned to perfect, she didn't. She looked at me like she'd already sketched out my weak points and wasn't worried about defending hers. That was the first time I looked at a person and didn't immediately anticipate leverage or consequence. I just wanted another sentence, something she hadn't said yet. The team tried to bury her voice in the recap, too combative. No collaborative instinct, rogue personality, but I didn't forget her. In a world where people sell flattery like currency, she gave me criticism with clean hands. That's rare. The more they pushed her out, the more I requested her back, under aliases, custom walkthroughs, blind revisions, anonymous feedback loops I traced back to her design logic every single time. Eventually, I requested her for 3 core rebuilds. Nobody questioned it. Not then. She didn't ask why. Didn't even ask for a title. She just showed up, because her loyalty never needed branding. She came with vision, used silence as punctuation, and built rooms that made people feel things they didn't have language for, including me. Once, after a render meeting, we passed each other in the elevator line. She said, "Nothing. Just turned to get coffee." Followed. We sat across from each other like 2 architects, trying to decide who got the first cornerstone. You don't say much. "Outside design notes," she said while stirring. Sugar she never added, neither. "Do you? You like control?" "You say that like it's a flaw." "I say it like it exhausts you." I stared at her. She looked at me, calm, then said, "It's okay if you're tired. Sometimes." I blinked. "No one tells you that when your photo's on the cover of everything. Everyone thinks velocity is strength." She saw past the motion and offered stillness instead of strategy. I don't remember when I started seeking her out deliberately. I just know that the further she stepped back from the center, the more I wanted her near. I never said, "I need you," but I kept her on rotation, reviewed every document she sent, remembered every small thing she liked, the kind of pen she always requested, the scent she carried, the mug she filled and never finished. When we finally kissed, if you could even call it that, it wasn't planned. It was 2 people exhaling at the exact same time in a moment they accidentally shared. Ayla never let emotion become currency, but she let me feel like mine mattered for the first time in a long time. And maybe that's where it started, not the love, the fear. Because the second you feel something real in a place built on projection, you wonder how long you can keep it. before your silence becomes the only thing louder than your love. She never sat in the same place twice. Boardroom, archive room, garden courtyard on floor 6, back hallway bench near the fire exit no one used. Ayla didn't own a desk, but she always occupied space, deliberately, without inviting anyone to comment. At some point, I started making her locations part of my schedule, a 15-minute detour to the blueprint screening area because she liked the light in there, an impromptu walk across the roofline garden because she once said, overhead shade makes people speak. Truth. I rearranged logistics just to pass her. Nothing obvious. No trace. But I started recognizing how she rested her elbows on tables, how she always smoothed out the corner of any document before she reviewed it. I wondered, silently, how she'd touch pages in my apartment if she ever came. Over, if she'd fix the frame on my wall that hung 3 degrees off center, if she'd say anything about the shelves, custom built. To look minimal but never actually used, she probably would have frowned at them, called them showpieces for someone who had run out of stories, and she'd be, right? Work was my performance, but she didn't watch a single, act like she was impressed, which made me want to write. Something new every time she looked my way, not to win her, to be real under her gaze, and real wasn't easy for me, only efficient. She started using my design software, the one my own team hated for being too manual in her proposals. Asked her why, she shrugged. I hate preloaded. Perfection, I nodded, pretending I'd known that all along. Then bought her a top-line stylus and left it, unwrapped, on her chair with no card. She never thanked me, only looked up when I walked by and said, "Don't think this gets you out of notes." I liked that. I liked all of it too much. The first time she came to my apartment, it wasn't for dinner. I'd invited her to consult on a prototype wall divider. She said yes. Then came 3 hours late. No apology. Sight disruption, she mumbled, hair messy, eyes wired, carried Thai takeout and blueprints rolled under one arm. She barely looked around, didn't comment on the space, didn't scan the bookshelves like most people do. She dropped onto the floor, opened her sketch roll, and said, "You're lighting this all wrong. I just watched." Something about the way she sat cross-legged in a $2,000 living room, like it was just another corner of her, day made me feel less like I had money, and more like I could afford moments I didn't deserve. That became a pattern. Nights with no plans. Her in my space. Neither of us acknowledging what was becoming routine. She never stayed past 1 a.m. She never stayed overnight. But I noticed whenever she stood up to leave, she hesitated, hand on the doorframe like she was checking her own pulse. And once, while adjusting her shoulder bag, she whispered, "You treat your heart like a comp card, always on display." Never in rotation, I didn't reply. Not because I disagreed, because it hit too hard to answer without fumbling the truth. We didn't kiss again for weeks after the elevator. We didn't even touch, but you could feel the undercurrent shift. Like a dam threatening to give when no one was watching. She'd move her chair half an inch closer during late reviews. I'd watch her face for reactions during team strikes, only her face, no one else's. We started to linger a second too long. After casual goodbyes, even the security guard noticed once. "You two work the longest hours," he said with a wink I pretended not to see. She smiled politely. I said nothing, because to give it language was to risk defining it too soon, and she didn't want definition. Not yet, just recognition. "You ever wonder what this is?" she asked one afternoon when we were standing by a mocked-up display window. We were alone. The room glowed faintly gold. My tie was still on. Her hair had fallen loose. I knew exactly what she meant, so I said the hardest, truest thing I could. Yes, and I don't want to name it until I can mean it out loud. She didn't offer a response, just tucked her pen behind her ear, gathered her mock-ups and said softly, "Then hurry, before the silence becomes the only thing we remember." She never asked for proof, not once, not a label, not a photo, not a dinner in public that ended with a headline. She didn't need content, only presence. And I gave her that, on my terms, my apartment. My studio floor, my side of the city where cameras didn't reach and voices didn't carry, Kept her in the rooms that were just far. Enough for my name. I told myself it was protection. That love without spectacle was sacred. That privacy preserved. Value what I didn't say, what I didn't want to admit, was that I liked her better where no one could question what she meant to me. And the moment someone did, I said nothing. It happened at a design gala. My firm sponsored the event. She wasn't invited, but I asked if she wanted to come. She said yes, wore a black dress, not showy, not minimal, just sharp enough to feel intentional. Her lips matched the wine, and her heels dug slightly into the thin carpet as we stood near the stage. She held her glass with both hands. Didn't hover. Didn't chase introductions. She simply stood beside me like she always did, in her own space, content with observation. An hour in, someone leaned toward me. One of the junior execs from our Tokyo build smiled too wide, wore a navy velvet pocket square like he'd practiced, nudged his head toward her and whispered behind his glass, "Nice staging. Yours?" I stared at him, and for exactly 2 seconds I considered breaking the stem off whatever cocktail he was holding. Instead, I didn't say anything, didn't name her, didn't correct him, didn't tell him she wasn't staging or mine or a piece in the backdrop. I just looked away, and Ayla, she heard it, didn't react, not right away. She smiled at the nearest exhibit plaque, read it aloud like she didn't catch the word, but when we got back to the car, she didn't reach for my hand like she normally did, didn't lean back in the seat. She looked out the window, wet glass, streetlight shimmer. The only sound was the driver breathing through his nose too loudly. When I leaned over to ask if she wanted to stay the night, she said, "I'm tired." "Take me home." That week she skipped our review sessions. Sent her feedback in PDFs with no annotations, no ice, no fire, just silence so perfect it matched the architecture she used to. Critique, elevator conversations turned into single head nods. Meetings ended without her closing her folder. She didn't say she was angry, which made it worse because most people explode when they're close to leaving. Ayla faded, and I didn't notice until she was halfway gone. She stopped. Coming to the apartment after Thursday, I didn't ask. Why, didn't ask where she was on Saturday night when she usually came by and helped reset my project table. I told myself she needed space, which was easier to admit than this. She needed visibility, and I kept offering her shelter. Not love, not defense, not partnership, just a warm, curated hiding place out of the spotlight. Because I was scared what would happen if I said her name in a room that sold me as perfect. I let her in, but only through the side door. And eventually, she walked out the front, alone. She stopped calling it ours, the coffee, the sketches, the reference boards we once built together after midnight. They weren't ours anymore. They became the render, or your process, or that layout. The words were surgical. Not angry, not bitter, just clean. She began arriving later to our shared meetings, if she came at all. And when she did, she sat farther back in the room. I started catching myself glancing toward the door between pitches, searching for her hair tucked into that same soft bun, that familiar beige notepad with her ink-smudged annotations. Sometimes she came, more often she didn't. And when she did walk in, her steps lost rhythm, like she knew I was watching, but didn't want to break pace for me anymore. I found her on a Sunday evening at Bryant Park, sketching under a half-lit lamppost near the far edge of the fountain, coat sleeves fraying, fingers inked, earbuds dangling from her lap while her eyes followed lines only she could see. I stood there for a while before she looked up. "You're trespassing," she said, without sarcasm. Didn't know public space counted, she returned to her paper. For people like me, it does. We didn't scream, just talked. Sort of. You were supposed to be at the partner dinner. I said, I wasn't invited. You don't need to be invited. I need to be acknowledged. She tapped her pencil twice on the corner of her pad. I hated that sound because I used to love it. Ayla, I'm not mad, she said. I'm just finished pretending. My presence isn't something we keep adjusting the light around, I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I had too much to say, and none of it felt safe. I never said I was ashamed. I finally told her, but you haven't said one public word about me since you met. She stopped drawing, closed her sketchbook slowly, then turned her head toward me. Don't stay waiting for the words forever. Julian, I said her name again, quiet. Like maybe softness could count for action. She didn't flinch, but her next words didn't leave room for more. I never asked to be chosen. I just asked to be seen. Just that. As final and non-negotiable as a closed door you can still see through. That night, she didn't come home, didn't message, didn't check the shared cloud folder we used to pass project notes. Back and forth, the only thing that updated was a system alert saying her access had timed out after 7 days. 7 days. It had never hit that mark. Before, because even when we weren't speaking, she'd log in for the coffee orders, to keep things moving, to keep building. But the silence in the folder now matched the one in the apartment. Empty, sharp, still, stared at her last plan. It was a stripped-down kitchen design, no flourishes, no gold, 2 stools, both facing the wall instead of each. A note scribbled at the bottom. Sometimes the seat is here. You just forgot to look left. I wanted to reply, to send something, to fix it. But I didn't, because men like me don't always forget how to love. We just refuse to call it love until the person who needed to hear it's already walking away. She was on the list, not an official invite. Not the press badge. Not the panel, but I had told her quietly on a Tuesday, "Come if you want to." She nodded. That was our thing. No confirmations. Just implied understandings, and maybe that's why she no longer believed in any of them. That night I stood center stage, spotlights, crushed velvet chairs, linen name cards with cascading serif logos. I shook hands with developers old enough to call me kid, smiled for press, with legacy families who hated me on paper but adored my market stats. She walked in. 37 minutes after it started, hair down, black satin dress, 1 ring, no necklace. She wasn't trying to belong. She was living out one final possibility. That I might let her. I saw her across the room, between 2 investor wives and 1 bored tech mogul. She looked back just once, not an ask, not a plea, just a look meant to register presence. Didn't move, didn't nod, didn't acknowledge a thing, because Marcus was mid-sentence, because cameras were pointed, because I didn't know what I'd do with the noise that would come if I pulled her into view and made her part of a we this world never wanted. She sat near the back. 1 glass of water. No wine, no plate, 27 minutes, that's how long she stayed. She walked out before the first round of closing speeches, no drama. Not even a glance in my direction, just a quiet exit, through a service door meant for vendors. Finished the speech 10 minutes over time. Applause. Flash. Someone said, I looked bulletproof. A publication called me masterfully calculated, socially precise, brand immune. No one asked about her. They never would. Because once silence becomes the script, people just watch to see how still you can keep your face. I kept mine perfect until I heard the door lock click that night. Went home, sat in the dark kitchen, loosened my tie and waited for the sound of her keys. They didn't come. Midnight passed. Then 2. At 3:05 a.m., I finally stood, walked over to the window, and looked down 4 stories to the streetlight that still flickered beneath. The corner we used to meet at for late coffee runs, it was empty. Just wet concrete and dark taxis. Closed the curtains and knew that wasn't absence, it was departure. The kind you cause by doing absolutely nothing. The morning after, her side of the bed wasn't cold. It was untouched, no perfume in the air, no note, no brushed hair strands on the pillow. She never returned to collect her extra charger. Her backup sketchbook? The oversized hoodie she pretended not to like but wore every Sunday before noon. I emailed her once, just once. Subject: I saw you. No reply. It's probably still sitting somewhere unread, untouched, or maybe she deleted it without opening it, because by then, she already knew. I could design frameworks for 1,000 luxury homes, but I couldn't name the person one of them was meant to hold, because when push came to audit the table, And I had the mic, I chose structure, not us. The house didn't fall apart after she left. That would have been easier. Things breaking, lights flickering, faucets dripping, signs, but nothing happened. The insulation remained perfect. The systems updated automatically. Floorboards stayed silent. The temperature adjusted within half a degree of ideal at every hour. Like clockwork, my home, my legacy, flawless even. In her absence, especially in her absence. Began sleeping in the guest suite, couldn't bring myself to sleep in the bed we'd shared. Not because it reminded me of her, because it didn't. Her side was still made. Still pristine, like the staff never had to fix anything there at all. I knew she never stayed long enough to leave a mess. But now, it looked like she'd never been there at all. That's what quiet endings do. They erase you. Not angrily, cleanly. Sanitized grief. Windexed memory. You blink twice and suddenly wonder if it was ever yours to claim in the first place. The house, still admired in magazines, still pinned endlessly to design blogs, became a museum of unspoken things. She once said, "Your walls echo too perfectly to feel true." Now I heard that echo everywhere, in conversations I rehearsed and never had, in the mug that never got chipped, the drawer too empty, the bathroom shelf I stopped using because I didn't want to see her still waiting to be filled. No one asked about her. The people closest to me knew better. Those who didn't care. They saw me smiling in recap panels, saw me introduce new divisions, unveil flagship models, heard my voice crack just enough during TEDx talks to sound human, but never fragile. One reporter wrote, "He's sharper than ever, clearer since recentering. He must be happy." What they saw was structure. What they never saw was what was missing between the beams. Ayla's name isn't in any NDA. She was smart enough for that. She left no trace in legal, billing, wiped her access before I could time it, erased her credentials with the kind of thoroughness you only learn through heartbreak or design. I should have respected it. I didn't. I ran a full audit on the building systems a month after she disappeared. Her silhouette lit up in doorframe logs and timestamps. Little fragments. 11:47 p.m., 3:12 a.m., 7:03 p.m. shadows of a woman who didn't raise hell when she was leaving. Just slowly logged out of the system we built together. The house still ran perfectly, but it stopped holding anything. Not emotion. Not warmth. Not sound. The spaces were too polished. Too straight. Too cold. Exactly how I'd designed them. And now I understood. We didn't go out in flames. We became architecture. It was under the corner of the desk drawer. The one I never used, tucked behind old renderings and ink cartridges, folded twice. Wrapped in an elastic band I recognized from her wrist. It wasn't hidden. Not really. Just forgotten. Or maybe left. Not as a message. Not a goodbye, just as something that didn't scream when it stayed behind. An architectural sketch. Small paper. Torn edge. Graphite smudge on the corner where her thumb always pressed too tightly. It wasn't of this house, but it was familiar. A compact layout. Open concept gallery. Soft lines. A living room facing inward. No view. 2 armchairs. 1 table. No television. The detail was what gutted me. In the center of it, she'd sketched 2 empty mugs, angled toward each other. Not accidental, a note beneath it. 1 sentence for the space that only ever made sense in silence. That was it. No name. No date. No dramatic final flourish. Just the drawing of a life we had only in fragments. Built into a plan she never discussed. She never asked me for that house. Never hinted. Never said, "Let's live somewhere else." She knew I wasn't ready to say, "I want to be public about building with you," so she sketched it instead. Not as hope, not as bait, just as proof she thought of us as something worth shaping. I sat with it for an hour. No one called. No one interrupted. The house stayed quiet. The kind of quiet that makes even success feel fragile. That sketch did what nothing else had. It made me grieve for the version of myself she never waited around to see. I could have built that space in a week, could have picked up the phone, found her, said something stupid or honest or unfinished. But I didn't, because part of me believed she had left no trace. Turns out I just didn't know where to look. It was a Thursday afternoon, gray sky, light traffic. I was supposed to be across town, but the meeting got pushed. Window down, tie loosened, street humming with the rhythm of a city that had gotten somehow younger while I'd gotten older. That's when I saw her. Ayla, standing in front of a bookstore, canvas bag over one shoulder. Corduroy jacket, hair shorter than I remembered. She was talking to someone I didn't recognize, a woman, maybe a friend, maybe a partner. Didn't matter. She was laughing, head tilted slightly, eyes squinting, mouth open in a way I hadn't seen in years. I didn't stop the car, didn't roll down the window, didn't follow, didn't pretend the timing was fate. I just watched from a red light, from behind all the things I never said, from the silence I wore in every room she once stood inside. She looked better, not styled, not presented, just better. Like happiness wasn't something she rationed anymore, like she didn't check herself in, mirrored elevators for traces of performance. She wasn't performing at all, she was being. And that's when it hit me. She didn't heal after losing me. She healed after finally stepping away from the man who taught her how easy it was to stay invisible. I didn't make her stronger by missing her. She just regrew in the absence. Life moved on, not in circles that led back to me, but in lines that moved quietly forward, without permission, without apology, without my name in the credits. The light turned green. My driver asked if I wanted to stop. I said no, because for once I wasn't going to rewrite the story, not reverse it, not retell it, just look it in the face. She was gone, but not empty, just gone in the way only people who find peace ever really are, and some people don't look back because they're finally walking somewhere that doesn't ask them to shrink. She wasn't mine anymore, but the memory still stayed in my chest like a light that flickers. Even after the building powers down, I gave them everything they asked for. Buildings with glass walls no one could see through. Software that predicted emotional fall-off before the user did. Luxury coded in modesty. Designs that made silence look like elegance instead of what it really was. Abandonment. They said I was visionary. Called me a force. A standard for clean ethics and luxury innovation. They didn't know half of it. Didn't see the notes I still keep in the drawer of my nightstand. The last coffee order she ever wrote on a napkin. Didn't hear the sound I still wait for each night. Keys turning in a door she stopped walking through. They didn't know that I once built a temple of perfection and politely asked love to wait. Outside, it didn't. It left. And that's what makes this legacy feel so sharply intact, too intact, because nothing fell apart when she disappeared. Everything just kept functioning, including me, and I hate how well I survived. You know why people ask about regret? They say it like it's an interview checkbox. Do you regret how aggressive you were in expansion? Do you regret pushing human staff out faster than your AI rollout? Do you regret the international buyouts? I say no, because they didn't ask the right question. Not once has anyone said, do you regret the fact that everything you ever created couldn't hold on to the one person who looked at you like a man instead of a market? That's the one I'd answer, and I'd say yes, without hesitation, without PR cue cards. Just yes. She haunts nothing. That's the worst part. She's gone. Not lingering. Not dramatic. Not romanticized, just carved out of the life like an edit I agreed to while pretending I was too focused to notice. She loved me. I know that now because only someone who loved me would have left the way she did. Quietly. With dignity. Without burning the frame. She respected the system, even as she removed herself from it, and she never asked for credit. She just asked for presence now. Now I give talks on design theory. I donate in others' names. I produce signature series for publications that once questioned if I'd become too distant. I smile more. Pause more. Still sleep less. The house remains pristine, but it always feels uninhabited. Because when you teach structure to silence emotion, you forget how to invite anyone back in, including yourself. They'll remember me, that's certain. The legacy holds. The panels are funded. The name is bulletproof. But when I hear it introduced on stage... Now, next is Julian Maddox, CEO of Maddox Elements. It doesn't feel like a person. It feels like the armor she once asked me to take off just once, on a rooftop. After a long night where neither of us said what we wanted, I should have said, stay, not conditionally, not carefully, not in private, just out loud, with both feet planted firmly in the life I claimed to have built from truth. But I didn't. I said nothing, and silence, even when inspired by fear, is still a choice. I still have the sketch, the one of the home she never asked me to build. 2 chairs, 1 table, open beams, soft walls. No audience, just 2 people who could see each other from anywhere in the room. That was her version of love, and I never earned it, not because I was weak, but because I was afraid of letting softness ruin the structure. Now I know, structure without softness is just space. They say I had the world at my feet, and they're right. But what good is the world when the only thing you can't stand to live without walked out without breaking anything on her way out?